Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today I have got the lovely Angelica-Hazel. She is a clinical nutritionist and a natural fertility educator. And today we're going to dive into all things women's health and women's cycles and fertility and all the fun things for women and men. Let's not leave the men out because when it comes to fertility, they are just as important. So welcome, Angelica. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I listened to your last episode. I think it was yesterday, and I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
All of the culinary herbs. I was like, yeah.
I like food, and I believe that food should be not taken for granted. And you know, nature has provided us with all the wonderful tools, so let's utilize them.
100%. I think it's a good starting point for like when you fall in love with food, you kind of can fall in love with taking better care of yourself. So yeah.
That was fun. It was just like we could talk about food and how to use herbs and inspired to, you know, create some recipes and whatnot. So
yeah, I think you inspired me last night. I was drinking ginger tea. I was like, oh yeah.
That was the plan. I'm glad it worked.
You were talking to me, right?
Yeah. So before we get into all the good stuff, can you, or would you like to tell us a bit about who you are, a bit about your background and what got you into this amazing industry?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So as you said, I'm a clinical nutritionist, so I've got a bachelor in nutrition. After studying nutrition, actually, in the last week of my degree, I gave birth 5 days after my last exam.
Wow.
And that kind of started me on my journey of everything like fertility, women's health related. You know, before I got into this area, I was passionate about like all areas of nutrition. But then I think since having my daughter, everything just changed. And I just wanted to support more women to have, you know, a positive experience in that. So I did further training in natural fertility education. And that helped me to, I guess, identify when in your cycle you're fertile and when you're not. So I guess a lot of what I do is obviously the nutrition, and that's quite optimized for fertility, women's health, postpartum, but then also that education around their cycle. Because when you learn about it, it's surprising that it's not something that women know. And, you know, so that was something I really wanted to share with more women. And then because life isn't crazy enough, so I'm a mum of 2. I've also started studying my master's in reproductive medicine, which I'm just crazy passionate about. I love it. I support lots of clients either with natural conception or going down the assisted reproductive technology pathway. So doing that. Oh, and I've got a tea line. So, you know, just a little bit of that too.
Just to add, you know, just in case you don't have enough going on.
But I, you know, wholeheartedly love all of the areas. I love supporting women. And I guess my real area is preconception to postpartum. So, yeah.
And you're also a fellow Hashi warrior?
Yes, was diagnosed. What year is it? Oh, yeah, last year. I'm like, what year is it? About 5 months after having my second child.
Sorry, I didn't mean like, yay, as in... Just, you know, it's nice to talk to people who have been on that journey, and I'd love to definitely, like, we're going to discuss all the fertility, and you know, I think discussing some period talk would be helpful as well. But I definitely love to touch on how Hashimoto's can affect those things, particularly for my lovely listeners who, as I mentioned to you off recording, I do have a lot of listeners who do have Hashimoto's or Graves' disease or other thyroid conditions, and I think it's something that is important to be mindful of, and it can be potentially a missed factor when it comes to, you know, conception and things like that. So I'd love to tie that into the chat somehow, and it's good to hear it from someone who, you know, who has the condition, because I think it makes it much more you know, it's easier to empathize with someone who's been through that journey. And
For sure. It was it's been a struggle. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying, like, just for someone who's been through those trials of dealing with something like, you know, an autoimmune condition. So
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think it is something that can be missed with infertility, but also postpartum. It's
yeah,
very much not assessed.
yeah, absolutely. So let's start with periods.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about that, because I mean, you know, I think it's awesome. There's so much information out there nowadays for women, about, you know, like what's a normal period and what's not normal. And I think we've come such a long way from, you know, from once upon a time when it's like, oh, you get, you know, debilitating like 20 out of 10 pains. That's normal. Just take some Nurofen, you'll be okay. Like, I think it's still very common, but at least now we're becoming more aware that it's not normal and it shouldn't be as common as it is. So I think it's awesome that there's a lot more awareness around that. But let's chat a little bit about women's periods and women's cycles. Like, what are some things that we can start to look out for to ensure a healthy period? And what does it mean to have a healthy period?
Look, I guess, you know, when we're really starting from the start, I think there's been a stigma surrounding periods for so long. I think the first part in addressing any of the issues that women face is to be able to talk about it freely, to have the confidence, because I know even growing up, you know, I was in school and like I had a tampon in like my pencil case and it fell out one time and my girlfriend was like, oh, ooh. So, you know, if we've still got those kind of stigmatizing conversations, it just adds to us not wanting to share. So I think, you know, first and foremost, being able to have these conversations with other women means we're more likely to have these conversations with health professionals. Because if you're just talking to your group, say you're talking to your mother, your grandmother, and what's normal for them is being in debilitating pain or having really heavy bleeds, then that's just what you think is normal. So it's having that confidence to start the conversation, and then, you know, being able to identify where the issues lie and what's going on, because we know that periods, it's normal to have mild discomfort, but if you're in pain that is affecting your ability to live your life, then that's not okay, and this needs to be further investigated. And I think like one reason I'm really passionate about having this conversation is I did training with, have you heard of Dr. Andrew Orr?
Yes.
Oh, he's amazing. So I did training with him, and it was all about endometriosis.
Yeah.
And that just absolutely blew my mind, because not only is it so, you know, like the time it takes for a diagnosis to come into place, it's just so poorly understood, even within the medical community. I mean, I know I've got clients with debilitating pains and their GP doesn't think it's severe enough to warrant a laparoscopy, or so it. Yeah. So I guess, like, you know, if you're experiencing pain like that, it's definitely worth getting it checked out, because it could be something like endometriosis. And if you do have endometriosis, you want to get it looked at earlier rather than later, because again, that can lead to infertility.
Yeah. I remember probably in my mid-teens, I would get really, really bad period pains. They didn't really start until I was about 14, 15, 16-ish. And I used to think it was normal. I used to think, well, this is just what happens. And I would be crippled in pain. I would be vomiting. It was, you know, I would have to take days off school. It was horrible. And when I went to my doctor, straight away, they just put me on the pill.
Yeah.
No questions asked, no further investigation, no thought to check, you know, is it potentially endometriosis? I didn't even know what that word meant until I started studying nutritional medicine. And yeah, I was on the pill for so long. Like, I didn't come off it till I was 30.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, and I just thought that was normal. I'm like, well, this, you know, it's fine. I read the side effects on the back, you know, of the little pamphlet. It didn't mean anything, nothing registered. I was like, well, I'm not experiencing these. I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's stopping my, my horrible period pain. So it must be doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I never questioned it, and it's just masking the problem.
100%. I think maybe every second woman that I speak to has had a similar experience. Maybe not, they haven't necessarily gone on it for debilitating pain, but often it's they go on the pill to regulate their cycle, and they put on it during adolescence, and they don't realize that during that time it's quite normal to have a bit more of an irregular cycle, because the communication between your brain and your ovaries is still starting. So it's just, here, this is happening, you take the pill and it will regulate and fix it, and it doesn't. And then when they come off of it and want to have a baby, they've still got those issues that they had pre-pill.
Yeah.
So it's but yeah, potentially they're more deficient. And
I mean, the pill does deplete a lot of those important nutrients, particularly nutrients required for a healthy conception, which is not something that a doctor will discuss with you.
No, I mean, I think with GPs, they do what they do good, but they're not set up in the way that we are to be able to support our clients. They've got such a small time frame. They don't have time to go through all of that with women. Whereas that's what, us natural health practitioners can do really well. We can really hold space and provide a bit more personalized care. So it's just difficult. And I think it's about all of us working collaboratively and doing what we do best.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, as you said, it is important to have those conversations, because obviously not everyone is going to have that mindset where they, we know that when we book in with a GP, you might be allocated 10-15 minutes and you might only use 5 minutes of the time.
Yeah.
But particularly for, like for young women, teenagers who might be experiencing these period pains, they might not have that train of thought to go, hang on, well, maybe I'll go and see someone like yourself, because I want to support a healthy, reproductive system and, potentially set myself up for having a baby in the next few years. They don't think like that. So I think it is important to have, just to bring awareness that if you want to go on the pill, that's fine, but have the information on hand and have access to that information so that you can make an informed decision as much as you can when you're 15, 16 years old,
100%. Like, I know that there is so much beating down on the pill, and I'm not pro-pill, I'm pro-choice. If a woman, has all of the information and can make, as you said, an informed choice and wants to be on the pill, go on the pill. But if you're not given all of the options, then, how can you make an informed choice?
You can't, because unfortunately it's, you and I mean, if you're someone who's experienced those period pains, I mean, one of my triggers for period pains, I don't have endometriosis, thankfully, but mine tends to come more from inflammation. And not proud to say this, but last month I did have quite a bit of dairy, which I shouldn't have. And I had the worst period pains I've had in years. And I was popping the Nurophens and the Panadeine forts, because I was just like, I don't care what these drugs do to me. I need the pain gone. It was horrible. So I can understand that sometimes when people are experiencing it, especially someone who might have endometriosis, and I've heard of horrible stories where they're like crippled in pain for hours on end for 2 to 3 days at a time. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like
debilitating. I've got one client currently, and she's the most beautiful gal. She can't work because of her endometriosis. She's got whole weeks where she's just bedridden, can't do anything. And then often, like, hand in hand with endometriosis is there's a compromised microbiome. So there's often like all of these gut issues, and it's just,
also just for, let's call them regular period pains, which aren't normal, but just to differentiate that it's not endometriosis, those have a driver as well, because as we said, it's not normal.
Yes,
So in your experience, what are some of the common triggers that might cause women to have these uncomfortable periods?
Stress can be huge. I mean, stress can, block ovulation. That's a huge thing that I see. Women will ovulate later, or they won't ovulate for a while. Stress can definitely hamper that. Too much sugar, inflammatory diet. Just trying to think, a whole bunch of things. And I think what I really try and do is be able to tune in with my clients and get them to identify the fact that you were able to say, I had a lot of dairy and it did this. Lots of the time when you ask people what makes it better, what makes it worse, they're so out of touch with their own body, they don't know. So I think that's often the first step for me, getting them back in touch with how foods make them feel. Because modern lifestyle, we're just chucking everything down and just like moving on to the next thing. So it's being more mindful in what you're putting in your body.
Because the diet can definitely trigger that inflammatory response, and everyone will have different triggers, but typically like stress, high sugar diets,
nutrient deficiencies,
which can be caused by the pill, as we said. So if you're taking the pill for a really long time, as I did, and my diet was not great at all. I mean, I was drinking energy drinks, and I was eating takeaway food, and I'm talking like KFC and McDonald's and Coca-Cola in abundance back in the day. But it disrupts that gut microbiome, and then that disrupts your inflammatory signals, and it disrupts your hormone signals, and kind of just causes a lot of havoc on the body. So it's not a good time.
No, it's not. And in fact, I think one of the most common things I've noticed from clients when they've gone off of the pill is the effect that it has on their mental health. So it's like they come off of it and they're like, I feel like the fog has cleared. And I know I experienced that too. I've just felt so many emotions, whereas I went on the pill and I've been off of it for the last 8 years, and I just feel so much more level.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't regulate your periods.
No, it suppresses ovulation.
Sorry, not periods. I meant to say hormones. It doesn't regulate your hormones.
No, it switches them off and gives artificial hormones in replacement. So, and we need our hormones for more things than just having babies.
Absolutely. So with that, you mentioned that you have a passion for preconception care. So let's talk a bit about that. What are some important things that people should be mindful of and start to consider in the preconception phase?
Okay, so for me, I'm very big on seeing the man and the woman, or obviously if it's same-sex couples, that's different. But you need a healthy sperm and healthy egg to make a baby. If I'm doing any fertility work, I'm doing it with both parties, because otherwise you're only getting half of the picture. But I think minimizing toxin exposure is huge. And I think this is why I really like to work a minimum of 3 months, but ideally if we've got 6 to 12 months, that's amazing, because it can take a while to support like detoxification, getting rid of all of these things, and just like for healthy habits. Some clients will want to just rip the band-aid off and stop doing all of this, but then other clients will be like, oh no, don't take that away from me. So it's things like, your antiperspirant deodorants with like all the aluminium, it's plastics like the BPAs, and things like receipts, drinking out of, like, my pet haters like coffee cups and they're drinking out of the plastic. I'm like, no.
This is why we have keep cups.
Yeah, exactly. But I find that's a huge thing. Minimizing stress in both partners, again, super important, because as I said, it can cause irregular cycles. You need a nutritionally replete diet, so balanced.
But with the diet, like, what are some of the key nutrients that you would want to assess for?
Well, I mean, I always look at iron. That's pretty key. Often, iron is low for so many women. Vitamin D, that's huge, and lower levels of vitamin D, especially, I mean, I've seen this clinically so much. The higher levels, the more like positive fertility outcomes with IVF. I've found so much. So many things. It really depends on the person to what I'm looking at, but I want to see a baseline of everything. And I think the best way to do that is to just have a varied diet, all of the different food groups. It's all balance and diversity.
Yeah. So obviously you would assess their diet, maybe even like, do you work with things like diet diaries just to try and...
Yes. So normally in my initial consult, I'll do like a 24-hour diet recall. I'm like, so what do you eat? But that's often quite difficult for people because they're like, I don't know, like what do I even eat? And then I'll say, all right, I'm going to send you home with a 7-day diet diary. I don't want you to write what you think I want to hear. I just want you to write what you're having. And that way we've got a base point for, what we can, where you're at. And then I'm very big on, I guess, swapping things as opposed to just being like, all right, let's wipe this, what you're doing, and I want you to eat what I want you to eat. It's more finding what they are naturally attracted to, finding ways to, pimp up their meals, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I found when I was doing clinic and seeing clients, you would ask people, well, tell me about your diet. And it's like, it's like, yeah, I eat really well. I eat pretty well. Like, okay, tell me what you have. And oftentimes, you might think that you're eating the right foods, but they might not be the greatest. Or, even if you're having a healthy diet, it might be you're just not having enough quantity of those things. Things like vitamin D deficiency are common, iron deficiency are common, magnesium deficiency, zinc deficiency, all those sorts of things.
So many things.
Yeah.
And then I guess like when we know what you're eating and the quantities, then we can look, at your blood work and say, okay, well, are you absorbing it? Where are we? Because I know we talked before when we weren't recording, but our levels, what is in range when you go to the doctors and classed as all good is not necessarily the same as like what we look at, because we're looking at more optimal.
Yeah,
I don't care if you're in that narrow like reference range that says, yeah, you're all good. I want you to be healthy. I want you to, and often that's a fair bit higher, especially with things like vitamin D.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm constantly seeing, clients will come back and they're like, oh yeah, my vitamin D was like 58 or 60. And I'm like, no, I want you up around the 90 to 100. Like, no.
I know I went, I think it was like 6 months ago, I went to get my blood, because I get my blood tested every 6 months.
Okay.
And my doctor's like, yeah, your vitamin D is really good. It was 53. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, thank you. Thanks for checking. And then I went back, it was probably about a month ago. And I'm like, can you please check my vitamin D levels again? And I was, out in the sun every day. And because I mean, it's more challenging to get vitamin D from food sources.
And with Hashimotos, that impairs the vitamin D.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
That was something I didn't know prior to having Hashies. So
yeah,
it's crap, but it's been an amazing learning curve for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Understanding.
Absolutely. And like, we need, and I was like 53, that's super low. And I mean, I'm not trying to fall pregnant, but with my Hashimoto's, I'm like, I want to have optimal vitamin D. I don't want normal. I want optimal.
100%. I mean, you've already got low energy.
Exactly. And in 5 months, it went up to almost 100. So I was like, yes.
That's amazing.
And that was mostly just from sun exposure. So
that's huge.
Don't take the sun for granted. Don't go out there without a sunscreen when it's like UV 11 and soak up the sun for 2 hours because you'll burn. But 10 to 20 minutes, expose your limbs, go for a walk, soak up some of those rays, and again,
music to my ears. Pardon?
I was just going to say, like, there are instances where that absorption and conversion might be skewed a little bit in some people. But again, this is why it's awesome to work with, you know, you can definitely get those standard blood tests done at the doctors because they are free, and it's amazing that we have access to those services. But sometimes we need further testing, particularly, you know, if you are experiencing more chronic health issues, or if you might be having trouble with conception. You know, there are some amazing functional tests. Sorry, my Siri does that every so often. You know, there are some amazing functional tests that can be done with practitioners like yourself, where you can go a little bit deeper, you know, particularly even with hormone testing. You know, if you go to the doctors, like, what do? They just like kind of check your estrogen and might test your testosterone and things like that.
Yeah, and even then it's working out what day they tested on. So it's, you know, if they're looking for progesterone and then they don't do it, like they're not assessing when actually ovulation occurred, then it can be skewed results. Often clients will come in to see me and they've got hormonal tests from ages ago, and I'm like, well, I don't know what day this was. It's quite difficult to...
It needs to be done at certain times, and then there's different variations of hormones that you need to look at, and then of course looking at it in conjunction with your lifestyle, your toxic exposure, your diet, your nutrient intake, and then assessing it with those standardized blood tests that you can get from your doctor, because sometimes what looks normal on their pathology might not really make sense in, you know, in relation to the case taking, like the information that you've taken just from verbally speaking to the client, or potentially from having more in-depth testing done as well. So
100%. And I just think it's so important to communicate like the results, because often, you know, as the clients don't even get the blood test results, they're like, yeah, you're fine, everything's all good. And they're like, I don't feel fine, I feel crazy. So it's, you know, I really encourage anyone with a chronic health condition or anyone trying to get pregnant is having that team of people like on your like health team that support you and work together. I think just gives you the, you know, best chance of getting the result that you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I find like when you work collaboratively with GPs, they're more like, they'll do more. They'll do more. So it's that respect on both levels, you know, writing doctor's letters, explaining the reason, I guess, because I work with, you know, lots of like couples with long-term fertility challenges. They're more receptive to doing testing, which is really good. But yeah, often if it's a new client, they'll just get very basic tests.
And I find, you know, I've had one of the functional tests done maybe 2 years ago, and I went to my doctor and I wanted to get further testing done, and they were really reluctant to do the testing. And I said, look, have a look at these test results. I actually took in my functional test results, and I'm like, this is why I want to do it. This is what these tests came back with. And then based on that, they actually went ahead and ordered the testing for me, because they had a reason, like they felt like it was justified, whereas prior to that it wasn't justified. You know, and I think sometimes, as you said, working, I mean, there's so many different modalities when it comes to all sorts of health, you know, whether you're dealing with weight loss, diabetes, cardiovascular health, fertility, Hashimotos, any type of chronic health issue. There isn't just one practitioner that's gonna like resolve your problems. There isn't just one thing. There's so many modalities available, and there's you know, I was speaking to someone a few weeks ago, and you know, we were saying, like, just because you have a title, just because you're a clinical nutritionist or a doctor or an endocrinologist or whatever your title is, whatever your profession is, it doesn't mean you know everything about everything. You know, like
there can be everything to everyone. I
mean, you and I are both clinical nutritionists. We both have a bachelor degree in health science. We're both doing a master's degree, but I'm no expert in fertility. you know, because I haven't, like, that's not my area of passion, and it's not something that I've delved really deep into understanding or working with people, whereas you have. So
And I think that's really important to, like, when, someone's looking for a practitioner, it's to be guided by what they specialize in. And, when I first left uni, I was more like, yeah, I'll treat everybody. I'll help you, because I genuinely want to help.
yeah.
But now I'm kind of like, well, I would rather refer you on to someone who's going to do a fantastic job with you because they're passionate about that and they will nail it, than me not knowing as much and trying to treat, because that's not my area of genius. So it's,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I think for people, I can imagine, and I've heard of, I've seen friends go through things, I've heard of people go through things where, fertility can be it can take such a huge emotional toll on a woman as an individual, but also the couple, particularly if they are exploring, IVF, for example. Like, that can be a huge financial output for people, and that can put a further emotional strain on the person, their finances, and their relationship. So
100%.
I think working with someone who, you wouldn't want to work with someone who's like, oh, like, I wouldn't want them to come to me, because I'd be like, look, I can try and help you, but it's going to take me some time to get my head around it. Do you really want to spend that time for me to figure out what I'm doing with you?
Yeah.
Or because you're already stressed, you're already spending more money than you probably prefer to spend. Like, unless you're one of those people that's like, money's no object. Not the case for everyone, but would you rather go to someone who's like, yeah, okay, this is exactly what we're doing, I know exactly what I'm looking at. That's not to say there's not going to be obstacles, because no two people are the same. But to work with someone who's really like, this is their passion, and like, their passion is to help you achieve your desired outcome. So
especially I find with fertility, you're like, my patients, especially if they're going down the IVF route, they know their shit. Can I say shit? I said shit. Yeah, they know their shit. Like, they are often like, they've been on the Google searches, they're doing all the things. So like, they know. So if you don't know, it's you can't give them the support that they need. And I find when couples go through IVF or IUI, whatever route they're going down, what we do well is, like, we hold them a little bit more, because the clinics don't do that. So it's
also, I think, as much as people, regardless of whether it's fertility or any health condition, I think one thing that people are becoming better at these days is being their own health advocate.
Yeah,
because unfortunately
they've had to be.
And unfortunately, things do get missed, and things do get misdiagnosed, or just not diagnosed at all. So they do have to become a little bit more savvy and do their own research. But that doesn't mean that they can see, or like, they might not see certain blind spots.
100%. I mean, even practitioners, like, I think it's important that we go to practitioners, because just because we know a lot, you've always got blind spots when it comes to your own health.
Yeah. And this is why we always say, like, even practitioners, don't try and treat yourself, because even though you know stuff, you might be doing things that you're in denial about. Like, I can say that for myself.
Yeah.
Like eating dairy last month. Got my lesson, it's fine. I really learned it the hard way. But
yeah,
we still do things that we might need someone to just go, that's not really working in your favor.
Yeah.
Just reminding you, like, you do you. You have the information. Again, it's just like bringing it back to that informed consent, not consent, but making the informed decisions.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
And working within different modalities, I think.
Pardon?
Working within different modalities it's a huge advantage. And we have access to so many wonderful different styles of practitioners, from nutritionists, specialists and even Chinese medicine. I've heard amazing things for fertility.
I'm so big with Chinese medicine. There's an acupuncturist here in Adelaide, Tracy from Jab, and I send all of my clients to her because I go to her personally, and she's just amazing.
Yeah.
And I think it is so conducive to really good results because they, Chinese medicine, it works more on an energetic basis. They do things that I can't do.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes down to, you might be an expert in one area, but then there's someone else who's an expert in another area, and they can work so well in a partnership. And I think that's what it really comes down to, like even in, making a baby, like you need two people. It's a partnership. And I think sometimes when it's working with your health, you need a support system, and you need different people that can support you in different ways, whether it's emotional, dietary, or just, as you said, having someone that can really hold you through the process.
Yeah.
Especially if it is something that is quite like straining on your mental health.
Yeah, like I know one of my clients, she's been trying for a while, and she's down the IVF route. In our consults now, we used to really focus on food, and we still do, but some of the consults, I'm translating what, the information that her fertility specialists are telling her. And that's what she wants from me. She wants me to explain it in a way that makes sense to her and look at, all right, what can she actually do to help improve those outcomes? Because they don't necessarily give that to her. So,
and then it's like, what do you do with that information, and how do you apply it? Yeah.
So, I mean, how can we translate that into food? How can we, help with your lifestyle? Because with fertility, with all conditions, there are things that we can control, and then there are things that we can't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think even just going back to food, because that's our jam, no pun intended with the jam.
I like jam too though.
But I think for the most part, people know how to eat healthy. They understand what a healthy diet should look like. I mean, there's no shortage of Instagram recipes and things like that. And we know what nutrients are required. So we know we need iron and zinc and folate, and we need our B vitamins and all of those things for healthy conception or just health in general. But then what does that look like on a plate?
Yeah.
How do I combine these foods? What quantity do I need? Is my body actually absorbing them? What's my gut doing? So it's like, it's like, I know what foods I should be eating, and I'm eating this food which has iron in it, but there's so many other variables to consider. So, if you are someone who is dealing with trying to achieve a certain health outcome or pregnancy, it is important to potentially work with someone who can help you even just get your eating right, because it seems so simple, but when you look at it in that perspective.
Yeah, and that before supplements, because then it's it's very difficult for us to have the perfect diet, and our soils are not as nutrient dense as they once were, so supplementation is necessary in lots of cases, but then it's picking the right supplement for the right person. So not just going to your pharmacy and say, oh yeah, I'll just get this,
and I just take that when I feel like it, and I'll take this much because more is better.
And I found that a lot lately with COVID related stuff, I mean, it's great that they're getting nutrients in, but, I've had one client and she's got looser stools, but the amount of vitamin C she's taking, I'm just like, whoa, like that can have an effect on your gut.
And zinc can really throw things out as well. Like, you don't want to have too much zinc, because then that throws your copper off balance, and all of those wonderful biochemistry things.
But it's, again, being able to sit down and have that conversation with someone and say, what do I actually need? Why am I taking this? And
and how can I? So I mean, sometimes I think it is difficult for people to make those changes. But I think if they understand it in context, why you're doing it and what are you going to achieve at the end of this, I think that can definitely help. And again, having someone that you can check in with and just kind of get that reminder, like, okay, this is what we're working towards, and these are the steps that you need to take to get to that, and just kind of have like a support buddy, I guess.
Definitely. And I find, especially with fertility, like lots of women come to me, they're like, I want to be pregnant yesterday. So it's so important to really get their diet right, get them on the right supplements for them, because like time is not on our side.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes that's just a standard that the woman wants. Sometimes age really isn't on their side. So it's
absolutely. So can we touch a little bit on how might something like Hashimoto's affect fertility?
Well, Hashimoto slows everything down metabolically. It makes it a lot harder to lose weight, makes you a lot more tired, and it can cause irregular menstrual cycles. I remember when I was diagnosed, I thought I might have been pregnant, because I was like, oh, I'm getting a little bit heavier here, and I hadn't had my period for a while. And then I was just feeling so tired, so, could barely, pick myself up to do anything. And lo and behold, I wasn't pregnant. My thyroid was not working. So yeah, it can definitely throw a spanner in the works. However, it can impact fertility, but it doesn't always. So again, it's getting to that root cause of why is this happening, and then treating from that place.
Yeah.
So not just treating your symptoms, but looking at the root cause and being like, okay, why is this? What is my body asking for? Am I too stressed? Am I, do I need certain nutrients? And I guess, looking at it from there. Am I eating things that don't agree with me?
Yeah. And, I think on that note, fertility and Hashimoto's, it's essentially like it's interconnected to your endocrine system and your immune system. So I think treating Hashimoto's, if you're looking at it from a dietary perspective, and you're looking at, there's different studies coming out now, and there's more studies coming out now, which is fantastic for us, because I suppose, and I hate saying this, but it almost makes what we do seem more credible.
Yeah.
Even though we know how powerful food is, it's still not as recognized in amongst the medical field as it should be. But if we're looking at treating Hashimoto's from a dietary perspective, and to help to reduce those antibodies and to support the immune system, it's about nutrient density. It's about eliminating the toxins. It's about eliminating
inflammation,
the processed foods, reducing that omega-6 intake, which unfortunately our society seems to consume in abundance, which throws off our omega-3, which is our anti-inflammatory pathways. So I think in essence, it kind of helps to balance things out, even though when you're treating something like Hashimoto's or any other chronic autoimmune condition, you're inadvertently helping everything else fall into balance as well. So it's all really interconnected. So it's not to say there's one protocol for this and then there's a separate protocol for that. It all works together, and it's all about really reducing that inflammation and building up the gut health, supporting your gut health, enabling your body to absorb and utilize those nutrients, which we need for so many things. It's not just food, it's like these nutrients actually have a job to do in the body.
100%. 100%. I can definitely relate to all of that. And I've found, since being diagnosed, I've even been looking at like the emotional reasons behind it. And it's just mind blowing.
It's all connected. It really is so fascinating. And I think you probably find as well, like even now doing your master's and really diving like that much more deep, into the human body, it's just like you never stop being amazed with how incredible like our system is and how incredibly we are made.
Absolutely. I mean, I still get like blown away the fact that, I'm still breastfeeding. My daughter is 1 year and 3 months, and the fact that I've nourished her from my body, it's just like, oh, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And I guess, working with so many pregnant women and having children myself, I never take it for granted. I'm just like, oh, like the human body, it's just
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing.
Obviously work with helping people restore their health and fall pregnant and things like that. So which is amazing. I think it's amazing just to have people like yourself out there that can really help to, first of all, bring awareness to this topic and provide women with that, not just the physical support, but emotional support as well. But if you could leave our listeners with just like maybe a couple of tips on what they can start doing today. Or, I also want to say maybe not doing, but I don't want to make people feel like,
yeah, they're doing it wrong. Don't do that.
Maybe things to be mindful of, if they're
wanting to
conceive, but also if they're just wanting to maybe prep their body just to be a little bit more efficient in, absorbing nutrients and, maybe improving their fatigue, whatever it might be.
For sure. Okay, I guess number one, start before you're ready. Because it's always, I'll do it Monday, I'll do it next week, I'll do it then. But definitely when it comes to fertility, start today, because it can take a little while to get those healthy practices in place. We're all human, we do slip up from time to time. I would say, whether it's for fertility reasons or just for general women's health, start charting your cycle. Working with, like, as I said, I teach the fertility awareness method, and I teach my clients, whether they're coming to me for fertility or not, I teach them how to chart their cycle, because because your period is such a reflection of your overall health. So I think when you're more tuned into that, it's such you form a better relationship with your own body, because you have that greater understanding. And then, because if we understand what's going on, we can identify, am I ovulating? And that is absolutely crucial for, cycle regulation. We need to know if you're ovulating, and if you're not ovulating, why you're not ovulating. And if you're going down the fertility pathway, if you know when you're ovulating, you can time sex for getting pregnant. So I would say definitely chart. I found it often takes women around about at least 3 months to really understand what they're seeing. And when I'm talking about charting, I'm not saying relying on your app to tell you when you're fertile, or going to your doctor and he'll say, day 14 you'll ovulate, because we know that that's not always the case. But day 1 of your period is the first day of a proper bleed, and then I get women to chart their mucus, their fertile mucus, as well as their temperature.
Yeah, amazing.
So that would be, I guess, 2 things. If you're in a partnership, get both partners on board. The woman shouldn't have to bear the whole responsibility for health. That's crap. Because it's half him as well. So I think optimizing the health of both partners. And again, like, if you don't know where your diet's at, there's nothing wrong with just seeing someone. Just, even if you don't continue with them, it doesn't have to be a long-term expensive exercise if that doesn't resonate with you. But even just going in for an initial consult just to see where you're at, they might give you some pointers of little things that you can do. So it could be like, okay, you're having some avocado on toast. That's great. You're getting some carbs, you're getting some healthy fats. Why don't we add some eggs? Why don't we get a little bit more protein in? Can we put some nuts and seeds? Really up that, the nutrients, or something like that. Minimize stress. And you know what? It's what's going to work with you. So just because someone says, oh, you have to meditate, or you have to do this, like, the best exercise that you can do to reduce the stress is the one that you're going to do.
Yeah.
And the one that feels.
I love that. Yeah. And that can look different for everyone. Like, I'm just going to say it, I don't like meditating.
Yeah.
I sometimes I do it, usually before I go to bed, if
Mm.
I'm in the mood. I can't do it anyway because I just fall asleep, but I just try to enjoy it because I'm not a still person. I'd rather go for a walk or do a gym workout or something like that. And I find that's much more,
You.
I feel good, and my healthy, like my happy hormones are kind of going all over the place. And that's, like yoga or meditation, they're not for me. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad that you said that, because I wouldn't do that if someone told me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. So
Yeah, I just think, getting in the place where you're really starting to nurture yourself, listen to your body, asking your body, what it needs. And, there's no harm in getting support. And I guess the other thing that I would say, whether you're trying to get pregnant or whether you're battling a chronic health concern, is it's not your fault. Often as women, especially with fertility, if they're not getting pregnant, they really harbor this shame and guilt, like their body is failing them. So, and I was like, it's heavy, and I can understand where they're coming from. But I guess, starting from that place of self-love, self-acceptance, you're not failing yourself, and it's okay to reach out for support.
and there's so much support out there.
So much, so much.
And you mentioned that you're doing a program. Would you like to tell us a bit about that and how people can maybe jump on board if it's something that resonates with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I with a business partner, I'm releasing a program. It's an online 4-week program called Honoring Your Cycle. So it's getting women to have a better understanding of their menstrual cycle, smash the stigmas that's associated with menstruation, and teaching women how to eat, move, and live in alignment with their cycle. So recipes, yoga, education, and a beautiful, supportive community of women. We are opening tickets up the 28th of this month, so that's really soon, and we kick off on March 14th. So if you want to know more, my website is www.angelicahazel.com.au, or I'm pretty active on Instagram, and it's at Angelica_Hazel_nutrition. So yeah.
And if people wanted to work one-on-one with you, that would be the best way to get in contact?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, as I said, I offer one-on-one consults, or if it's for fertility related, I do couples fertility consults. Awesome. And that will give nutrition, fertility awareness, all of the things. So
awesome. That's so exciting.
I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a topic that we can't have enough. And I think it's, as you said earlier, it's so important to break that stigma around just around period talk.
Yeah.
It's like all of us women have our periods, and it's part of what makes us us, and
yeah, how we got here.
it's what helps us, create more little humans. And
100%. Like my business partner, she's Lebanese, Muslim, Australian, and she is hijabi, and it's really amazing hearing her perspective of, I guess the cultural stigma surrounding the menstrual cycle. And, it's such a women's thing. So we delve deep into that as well and unpack it a little bit deeper. So
I love
it. I think everyone has their own background on their experience with it, and especially different cultures. So
absolutely.
We're just trying to give that safe space for women to be able to come together, connect, and feel more empowered about their own body.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And we'll link all of those resources for people if they want to check it out or jump on board. But I think it sounds amazing, and I think so many women would get so much benefit out of it, because again, it's not something, I think one thing that I really love, even with doing these podcasts and just getting other practitioners like yourself on here, just really supporting women and helping to support their businesses and their ventures. And I think that we need that sisterhood, and we need to collaborate and work together, and realize that there's so many of us, and we all have such unique gifts and passions and an ability to bring whatever support might look like. You know, whether it doesn't matter what culture or what background or what your beliefs are, like there's a community out there, and I think it's awesome to be able to share that. So
that's beautiful. I love it.
Especially when it comes to our periods, because like,
yeah,
let's destigmatize that and make it normal, because it is normal.
It is normal. It's so normal.
You know, we deal with it for, I don't know, like 40 years of our life. So that sounds pretty intense, actually, now that I say it out loud.
Yeah, and the other thing is like you know, when we help reframe the way one woman feels about their period, it changes it for the next generation. And every other woman or, you know, young girl that they interact with, you know, who knows, the one thing that we say they might hold on to. So yeah, I think that was one of my big driving factors. And same with fertility, you know, if I can have a positive impact, not just on one person, but on other generations, it's that ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing and
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Angelica.
No worries, Elise. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.